I can be absolutely in bliss and joy in the present moment and grateful for everything I have. In the same breath, know that I'm here to do more.
The stock market is not where wealthy people have the majority of their assets. There's another way.
Drop the ball. How do you start to recreate, reinvent? They throw you the ball, you catch it. If you catch the ball, you run. Most importantly, do not drop the ball.
It was like sacrilegious to do bicep curls. CrossFit with bodybuilding, a renaissance.
I do have that power back. I also have a sense of gratitude that they're still there.
It's strong. We can take it. The last couple of years of life has been like learning that I don't have to just take it.
I got to see myself differently. It let a lot of judgment fall by the wayside.
Didn't know that was possible.
There's a wealth of energies down here in the wild self. There is nothing like the wilderness to activate innate aliveness inside of you.
As soon as I was diagnosed with this cancer and given a 20 to 30% chance of surviving, I said, I will be among the 20 to 30% because I'll do everything that they did and way more.
An addiction is any repeated behavior that does not produce the results you want. In order to know what you want, you must have a clearly stated green goal or objective for your life.
I've changed my habits that almost killed me to habits that make me the guy I am today. I'm a husband and a dad. I never thought that I would be able to do that.
Thermostat or a thermometer in your home, you're one of the two. You're either setting the temperature in the room or you're reacting. I then can be the nervous system of my home.
Hurt people, which is scary because if everyone's hurt, everyone's going to keep hurting people. But conversely, healed people heal people. We carry that work with us into the world.
What's wrong with wanting to be rich? I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the why, right? I said, have you ever considered this? Billionaires want to be Buddhists, but Buddhists do not want to be billionaires. Think about that. He's like, what do you mean? I go, dude, you're allowed. In my coach, I work with a guy, Ed Milet, and we talk about, he calls it blissfully dissatisfied. I can be absolutely in bliss and joy in the present moment and grateful for everything I have. In the same breath, know that I'm here to do more, that I can become more, that I can create more, that I can experience this world in a completely different lens. Oh, and by the way, if you do that, it turns out life is more magical. So one time I was coaching a woman and she was like 6-7 million in revenue. It's like, what's the goal? And she's like 100 million exit. I said, by when? She said 5 years. I said, cool, no problem. Why? She goes, so I can tell them all F you. I said, who? She goes, any person that's ever doubted me, all of my family members, all those people. I said, cool. I said, can you Google what percent of entrepreneurs, female founded, 6-7 million in revenue? Like what percentage in the world of entrepreneurship you're at? 0.02%. What are you waiting for? And she got super emotional. It makes me emotional just telling the story. Because she got it. She got it. There's no place to get to.
Yeah.
And I said, now that you realize this, let's do some fun stuff. Like, let's create from that place, right? It's the creativity versus the competition. Let's play with this. What do you truly feel called to do? I mean, you've already made it. Can we just acknowledge that? Like you've gotten to that place. You just haven't worked through the emotions of allowing yourself to feel what you were hoping at some point you'll feel. And anybody that's ever chased the white rabbit around that track and they finally catch it, they go, oh shit, it's not it. I believe in universal consciousness. I believe in the universal mind. I believe in, Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a beautiful book called Big Magic, right? There's these ideas floating around, right? This is a cool one for people to consider. Your first thought is not your thought. Second one is. That's cool, eh?
Wow.
Ooh.
Wait, unpack that for me.
Your first thought is not your thought.
Yeah.
You're driving down the street and you have a thought. Did you think about having that thought? Nope.
But when you thought,
second thought.
Yeah, which was thinking about the thing.
No, you don't. Yeah. So it's like, I think.
Oh, I see. And then you take it from
you decide. There. And then that's how the world works. It will present you ideas. We've all had $1 billion ideas. We just dismissed them, right? We didn't want to pursue them. This is another one. Fear makes bad decisions. Fear makes bad decisions. So in those moments, we're not who we need to become to actually execute against that idea. So we use fear. Like, I could never do that. What would people think? I don't do it. Then you're watching Shark Tank. You're like, I had that idea. I can't believe it. You see it all the time. It's happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I worked on that, or I didn't push it, or I thought of that, or I talked to a guy and we were going to do that, but then I was worried about him. So I decided to not do it. I mean, that's why I wish people would understand that all the stuff they want is on the other side of them connecting with that, right? Your frequency is what you frequently see. Your frequency. So this is what I was telling.
I have not heard that one before.
Dude, it's everything. That's why, think of, that's why like
so
there's no place to get to. I can live in that frequency today, and then I get to see the world that way. So a lot of people, the world is not as it is, it's as you are. So I can go through the world and be grumpy and angry and see everything wrong and just say the world is bad. And I can find 100 examples today. I can walk around, I can look out, I can be like, oh, that's happening. I saw a homeless person. The world is evil. Or I can go, the world is a beautiful place full of creativity and abundance. And then I could find examples of that. That's what I mean when I say that your frequency is what you frequently see. Your energetic state of how you show up, right? It's like, you ever meet a buddy and they're like, I need to find a new partner in life. They're like, what do you want? Make a list. And they go, hot, athletic, entrepreneurial, funny. And then you're like, cool. How many of those things are you? And they're like, it's like, dude, you won't attract that if you aren't that.
Yeah.
So you got to go ask yourself, how funny are you? And dude, you're not athletic. Look at this. You just pitch it. It's like, no. So I think that's the big idea, is that if you believe that there's this beautiful world out there that's going to support and that's where alignment matters, creativity matters, right? You got to create from the right place. It will show up. That frequency is what you will frequently see. Everybody else goes through the world and honestly, they're not connected. They're not awoke. They're not woken up. They're just walking generalities. Right.
Well, I've heard you speak about this in the past, but this idea of wanting something versus actually believing that you deserve the thing.
Dude, it's everything. So good. So I do leadership training every Monday to my media team. So I really love pouring in these guys, a bunch of 20-year-old buff dudes. And they all look like that too. Well, both of them, there's more. God. There's more. Oh yeah. One of them, we're funding his food intake for Mr. Olympia. Like we have a whole fridge. Yeah. It's again, belief. Yeah. So I'm teaching them this concept about, frequency and energy and how we attract and how we create call it what you want, but it's just like, at the end of the day, do you have 100% clarity? Do you have 100% belief? And can you hold that 100% of the time? And one of the guys, Jay, goes, I hear what you're saying, man, but like, I'm 5'10". You're telling me if I believe I could be 5'2", that I can make it happen? I said, no, Jay, because you don't believe it. And he goes, oh, you're right. I go, dude, you don't believe it. You will never be 6'2". You're 5'10". You'll never be 6'2". He goes, you're right. I don't believe it. I said, do you believe it? No, I don't believe it. Perfect. You don't believe it. See, if you truly wanted that, I would hold that belief so true and don't worry about timelines. And I think magically, personally, I believe if it was meant to be, there will be a magic surgery that happens to show up that makes it that if you want to be 6'2", you could. And in that moment, you will go, oh shit, it worked. That's how it works. You have to believe the truth and be okay that it may never come true, but you have to believe you could do it and that it's happened. I mean, all we're doing is we're becoming the person that attracts into our lives that future. Like, we don't want to freak people out, but like there is no, it's all now.
Yeah, freak them out. That's okay.
It's all now, dude. Yeah. Like anybody's like, oh, it used to be this way. It's going to be that. There's a here and now. And you just don't realize it because you have memory and you think that there's a tomorrow and a yesterday. Right? No, it's all happening right now in real time.
Oof. I've heard that a lot of times, but for some reason that time,
this house, man,
it just landed like, house. Holy so fuck,
beautiful.
Super, yeah, no, it is.
You can feel the energy. It's like, and that's why I can, when I work with people, that is one of the core tenets of what I teach is the ability to have 100% clarity, 100% belief, 100% of the time. And we just hold it as a truth and then let it go. It don't matter. There's no place to get to.
That's the other part. It don't matter.
It don't matter.
I think we put so much stock in everything mattering so much.
Yep.
And there's an element of it. It matters. And then it just doesn't.
For most people, the mattering is a response to I'm not enough.
Yes.
That's the unfortunate. It's the desire is to fill a hole that is called I'm not enough. If you become enough, that's a cool place. That's a cool place to create from. I think that great artists create art for themselves. Some people call that selfish. I call that the only way you should create art. Because when you try to get in a committee and what are people gonna like? It's like, what do you want? What do you feel called to create?
You can't go through all of these things without suffering PTSD. So I think we as a society hear about PTSD and we associate that with people that have been at war and have lost comrades and have seen death and have killed people, right? I mean, even if you hadn't seen one of your mates die, I'm not sure that I could kill somebody and never live a normal life again, right? But that you go into that game with one job, and if somebody's standing there, you have to shoot. That would destroy me, right? So if Oprah was 11 years ago, I sort of just tried to live life and focus on my children and my wife and just Band-Aid things all around. They were just Band-Aids. And whether that's sort of couch therapy once a month or once every 2 weeks, those are Band-Aids.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until about 5 years ago where I said, okay, the Band-Aids aren't working, right? And I need something different and deeper. And that's when I decided, I went to a place in Tennessee called Onsite. Fairly well known, but it's very private, but super intensive. And I've had some friends here from Austin, some of which you know that had gone there. And I just said, I got to go in, right? So you go so imagine couch therapy, as we call it, these Band-Aids is, so sit on that couch for an hour once or twice a month. Onsite is 5 days, all alone, one-on-one, 10 hours a day. Obviously no distraction, no devices, but intensive work, right? And so I did that. And I've, when I first went and did it, I was nervous about it and didn't know what I was getting into. I ended up loving it. Now I go all the time. Like if you said to me right now, dude, we're going to wrap this up and we're going to fly to Nashville and you're going to start a 5-day at Onsite or something very similar, I would fucking get up and sprint to the airport.
Wow.
Yeah. But all of that is, you have to address trauma, right? There's multiple ways to go about that. We did it through, there's a lot of tricks and tactics that they're real therapists, right? So just to go back to the Band-Aid thing. So sitting on that couch, those are Band-Aids. This is surgery. So if you want to go in and surgically repair something, you go to a place like Onsite, and I don't think I'm crossing the line. Anna did Hoffman, for example.
I've heard of that. Yeah,
Hoffman,
for sure.
Very well known. Those are surgical interventions.
Mm-hmm.
For any of them to work, you have to totally surrender.
Mm.
And, a lot of people sort of get guilted or shamed or forced to go to these interventions.
Mm-hmm.
They won't work. If you don't voluntarily go and say, that's it, I'm fucking giving it up. I'm giving everything. Right. And they won't work. Right. So maybe it just, the world was waiting for a time for me to say, okay, now's your time. We're creating content and anybody can create content. And it's been a part of my journey. Like if I would have lived 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and had the same thing happen,
mm-hmm.
where the world just said, okay, you're done, I'd be fucked. Totally fucked. But we don't live 50 years ago. Right? We live in a day and a time where anybody can create content. Anybody can play offense. And so I did that with the forward and I was on a great cadence of every week, which is a grind. And then COVID happened. I did them all in person, I should also say. I love doing them in person, the Zoom thing. So COVID hits, plus we moved to Aspen. So I got out, but in the meantime, we start the cycling show. Actually, last summer was our 7th season.
Jesus.
Yeah, 7th season. And we just started that on a whim. I didn't want to talk about cycling. And finally, we're like, fuck it. Let's just mess with these guys and do a cycling podcast. Like just 2 dipshits sitting in an Airstream at our neighbor's driveway in Aspen.
No way.
Fucking show goes to number 3 on iTunes right away. I'm like, wow, we really did fuck with them. That was cool. And so we just kept doing that and we didn't have any revenue. We didn't have any ad support and that's all changed. So yeah, those are, now that shows is huge. The world has given me a chance, right? And you sort of joked about getting picked last for kickball, which did not happen.
Right, second to last.
Well, it didn't matter. but if you use that grade school analogy, or imagine that scenario where you are getting picked for a team, or if you're just out throwing the football and somebody says, line up, you got the line of scrimmage and let's just start throwing routes, and you've got 5. There's always one kid who never gets thrown the ball.
Yeah.
And there's one kid who always gets thrown the ball. And then there's some kids in the middle, right? And not that I was the kid that never got thrown the ball, but the world had put me in a place where nobody was going to throw me the ball. Yeah. But that's not the point. The point is, just like I mentioned a second ago, how do you start to recreate, reinvent, play offense, whether it's starting a podcast, raising a fund, whatever it is. How do you do that? So the way I imagine it is, you just start running routes. They may not throw you the ball. Right? You might run 50 routes and you're like, man, nobody's throwing. That's not important. What is important is you keep running routes. And then there's 3 things that are super important after you've decided to continue running routes. Is number 1, if they throw you the ball, because eventually they will throw you the ball. If they throw you the ball, you catch it. Number 2, if you catch the ball, you run. And number 3, and most importantly, do not drop the ball. Right? And that's significant for me because I've dropped the ball, right? And so I went back to the line of scrimmage with nothing and just kept running routes, no passes. And then finally, the world threw me the ball.
Over the last 3 years, give or take, there's been this longer kind of tunnel season, this awareness season recently, or these pieces of awareness that have come together. And then the unique factor here that I'm hearing is that you've connected with certain sources like Dan and even some of these podcast guests that are helping you install a sense of consistency, stability, to create this kind of contrast in your life, which is beautiful. But as we speak to tunnel, I'm interested to hear more about Alison Armstrong, because I know it's been a big piece of the recent process for you. And I'd love to hear about kind of your reflections from her work, and perhaps how we as men in general can really better understand these ebbs and flows and this constant kind of setting and resetting that's very natural for us.
Yeah, great question. I always forget the name of her audiobook, The Amazing Development of Men. Thanks, Chase. Which is a must listen for men and women who are in relationship. I went for a walk and listened to about half of it and was emotional for a decent amount of the walk, because I felt seen and understood for the first time in my life. And I got to see myself differently. And it let a lot of judgment fall by the wayside. And, again, she kind of goes through these stages with the page, the knight, the prince, and the king. And I'll focus a little bit more on the king and the tunnel. But that's like, again, it's that period where we go from, like I said, certainty to uncertainty. And it's a necessary piece. I think about it with, I love Adyashanti talks about resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And these resume virtues are like the things we do to get jobs and make money, and just those things look good on a resume. And the eulogy virtues are those virtues that, you hope people aren't talking about how great you were at math at your funeral. And, it's this transition from the resume to the eulogy side, while not discarding the resume piece. And that's kind of where I went, I don't want to say off track, but that's where I got stuck. And what I've experienced lately is a coming together of those two things. And I feel it because I feel like I'm operating at a higher level than I ever have in my life as it pertains to the resume stuff. Building a legacy in that space. And I know that I've never been more in love with my wife. I've never seen her in the way that I see her today. And I didn't know that was possible. Not because I loved her so much. It was because we went through some hard times. Our family went through some challenges. And, this time last year, we just didn't know. And I had finally accepted that I may not be successful at this and we may have to go our separate ways. What's been really interesting, and this is something I would have never guessed, but for me, when I set some 25-year goals, one of them was to be happily married to Peyton. When I wrote that, I didn't know I was going to write that. Wow. To have 3 healthy, happy kids. So mind you, in 25 years, they're still my kids. They're just a bit older. And they have lots of grandkids. And so as having that as the big vision, things become binary again. Are you going to go do this thing by yourself that maybe doesn't serve a real purpose? Or are you going to go take this opportunity to spend time with your son or your daughter and just show up for him or her in a way that helps them be happy and healthy and want to have a family if that's a choice that they want? And like, what am I doing to support that goal? And it's just, I just started to recognize like all these moments where I would selfishly just want alone time or whatever because it's safe. I would choose the other option because it was binary to me. And so I'd say that's the biggest shift I've felt. I think I have always been pretty understanding with them. I think the resonance is just deeper now. I think they're opening up more.
Well, there's something really powerful here obviously for men in general, but particularly men who have had this pattern like you have been stuck in for the last 3 years around numbing and around not even being aware that they're numbing. But I'm just interested to know, like, if somebody was to come to you and say, look, whether it's I read Armstrong about tunnel, whatever language you're using,
yeah,
and essentially say, look, I'm there. I don't know how to get out of it. In fact, I'll make it personal for me. I absolutely relate to the numbing, do it in different ways, but absolutely relate to this piece of not even being aware of what I'm not willing to feel. My wife is constantly, and I'm married to a more intuitive woman who really,
she's a bit intuitive.
She feels things from miles away.
Yeah, she does.
And she's constantly telling me that I'm not willing. I'm avoiding something. And it's just this lack of awareness for me. So I'm interested to know, like, as a man, what advice would you give to men who may be in tunnel seasons, whether it's micro or macro tunnels, or just in general, have a hard time even figuring out where to start if they start to become aware that they're avoiding things and that they're numbing out in certain ways?
So that's a great question. And I would say, another word for the tunnel is like a midlife crisis, right? Everybody's pretty familiar with that.
I've had about 4 of them and I'm only 38.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the first thing I do is say, listen to her book, and then I say, have your partner listen to her book and then listen to her book on women. Let's start there. Cause she explains it and articulates it in such a way. I'm like, men, I challenge you to find a woman who has such an appreciation and an authentic love for men like Alison Armstrong. I haven't found it. I haven't seen it. I haven't heard it. I don't know that it exists. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. And she has such a beautiful understanding of it. So start there and just let that wash over you, that you are loved and lovable. From there, it's like, to answer your question specifically to you, like, if I think maybe she has listened to some of her work, but if Annalie hasn't, like I think what Alison Armstrong would say is just be there, support, love. Don't push them to feel when they're not ready to feel. I could be misquoting, but that's what I'm like. They are their fucking world is turned upside down. It is like certainty to uncertainty. That's as plain as I can say it. And that is fucking terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. They need love and they need to know that you're not going to fucking leave and abandon them and whatever else. It's so important to just feel that support. And so, I mean, through my experience, again, I was in the tunnel, I think much longer than she says people are in it. I think she says 6 months to 3 years, and I would argue I was in there probably 5 years. With that said, I think you need to give yourself grace. And whatever you're doing to numb, or to not feel, or to get energy, unearned fucking inspiration, try to let it not be destructive. I described this to you before, Ty, but my life for that period of time, not the entire time, but it felt largely 2D, two-dimensional, very flat. Today, it's 3D. It may be fucking 4D. I don't know, but I know it's alive and it's breathing. It's seen in my meditation, the connection to my altar, to my workouts. They've never felt so good. I have fun with them. Getting in the cold plunges is a completely different experience. It's a bit spiritual for me. It's not the grindy thing it used to be. Again, as I talked about, my connection to my wife is a brand new love. To my kids, to my brothers. It's just life is different. And I say this as a way to say, like, I believe it's around the corner. Some of the things to do are continue with the practices, even if they feel shitty. Form to leave form, structure to leave structure. Like, do the reps, even if you're not good at it. Don't judge yourself. Continue to show up. Maybe it's part of your 5 non-negotiables, but continue to do it. And then again, engage in Alison Armstrong's work. I think it's a great place to start.
At the end of the day, I just want to get the word out that there's another way. Wall Street spends a lot of money for people to basically learn one path of how to invest. And it's allow financial advisors people, they want you to outsource your financial well-being to someone else. Most people don't know how to qualify the person that is managing their money. Most people, between 4 and 5% can actually outperform the S&P 500 over a 15-year period of time.
That's 1 in 20 to 1 in 25 people.
Right. And by the way,
and probably you're not getting access to those people.
In the 15 years prior to that, not a single repeat. Right. So like over the long haul, it's really hard outside of like a super small percentage that really the ultra wealthy can afford, can do it. So, you're better off just investing in index funds and, saving the fees that you would be spending, because you're basically spending fees to underperform what you could do on your own at the lowest cost basis to have, play in the stock market. But at the same time, most people don't realize that the stock market is not where wealthy people have the majority of their assets. And even if you pay attention to the trends right now, like 2024 trends, as of this, the new year, I just looked at data this morning. for what's going on this new year. And you already see people, big family offices, which are, the organizations that manage the assets of the wealthiest people in the world. These family offices are trending somewhere between 7 and 12% down in public equities. So down in the stock market, favoring alternative investments, right? So most people don't realize that the wealthiest people in the world have over half of their net worth in private equity and real estate. And so it's interesting to look at it like,
and I'm like 95% in those things,
right?
Which is probably a little bit overweighted, but for sure.
And it's interesting because for most people, you build your wealth via concentration. You start a business, whatever it is, like in some instance, maybe you get into real estate and you concentrate in that, but most people build their wealth via concentration. But
I did it through trading.
Yep. They maintain it through diversification.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So any large concentration, once you have, pretty big net worth, puts it at risk. So you really want to spread that out. And so I think it's funny when, people think that the wealthiest have their money in the stock market. Well, not really, but like 15 to 25%. Right now we're seeing that starting to trend down more so than ever. So closer to the 15% than the 25%. But why have dollars exposed to the stock market? Because you can borrow against those on margin to then buy more of private equity and real estate.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't have a taxable event. You're using debt. You're not selling stock and using the proceeds and paying the tax. You're borrowing against them to buy more of these alternative investments. And then the long haul of the public equities, in theory, should, perform well.
I've been hearing that, today there are a lot more private companies that are staying private. And so my buddy was talking about the Russell. And he's like, it's just not a good indication of actually what's happening in the United States. There's so much money being made in these private companies that the public just does not have access to, that the normal everyday person doesn't, which I don't know if that's true or not. It makes sense to me, but all the more reason why your book is so important for the people who don't have access.
Yeah. And there is a lot of truth in that, because when you think about making returns, you make the biggest returns from inefficient markets. So the stock market is efficient. It's as efficient of a market as you're ever going to find, right? And by the way, are you ever going to win in the trading game? No way. 0% chance. Read Michael Lewis's Flash Boys. You don't stand a chance.
Right.
The trades today.
That's why I kind of got out of trading, because the even as being on the right side of it, when they came in and just really tightened up all the margins, I was taking more risk to make less money. It's like, what am I doing? So anyway,
Totally.
not to cut you off, but I get that.
You get it firsthand, which is nice. Most people don't, and they don't realize that the stock market is an algorithm game. It's an AI game. Even before we were talking about AI, right? So for a long time, it was quants who did the trading, who are like, geniuses on hedging and being able to make money in any type of market, right? So you got the quants that handle all the trades. Well, then you had the quants build formulas or build algorithms that the algorithms do it. And these algorithms, or AI, is doing this in milliseconds. So like the time it takes you to click a button to buy, they've already bought, sold. I mean, you're not going to win in day trading. You could win long-term by playing the market. But if you're doing that, why not just invest in indexes, right?
Yeah.
So if you want, what people in the investment world call alpha, or getting the outsized return, that's really going to come from the inefficient markets. The inefficient markets are the ones that are not as consolidated by institutional capital. So you've got your institutional investment over here that's highly consolidated. You've got your institutional, or I guess your mom and pop that does not have much institutional. You see this in small business. You see this in real estate. Over time. So I got started in mobile home parks. It's still the least concentrated real estate asset class.
Really?
Yeah. Versus like self-storage or multifamily. They're highly concentrated by institutional investment. So can you still get a good deal? Yeah, sure. Because there are still mom and pops, baby boomers that own them, but way less than, what basically the market over time, that niche, that real estate sector over time will continue to become more consolidated by institutional capital. So until it does, that's where your outsized returns are.
I've always said that, there's a wild self, and then on top of the wild self is your social self. And your social self, I think I said on the last podcast, we need it because we operate socially. But there inevitably comes a part that when you're highly socialized, another way to say it is like domesticated. It's not bad, but there's a wealth of energies that are down here in the wild self. And so what does any kind of inner work become? It becomes the attempt to consciously liberate that well of energy. And the journey to the wild man is the learning to go down and get that energy to come up, and then to work out how to bring it into your everyday life. And so almost always when we start talking about inner work, we're talking about the journey to more aliveness. Like, how can I feel fully alive in my own life? And there are a lot of ways to do that. We've spoken about shadow work. You can liberate shadow energy. Usually that comes with more aliveness. But for men and for women, but in different ways, there is nothing like the wilderness to activate that innate aliveness inside of you. And so it becomes, the first thing is that it's relational. So the journey of the wild man is to feel yourself in deep relationship with an ever-changing, alive ecosystem. And I often say, if you put your attention on alive things, you become more alive. So literally feeling the aliveness of the plants, the rivers, the oceans, all of that, it flows into you. And you start to realize, all of this, I'm a part of it. One of the things I said in Lion Tracker's Guide was, a great danger we all live with is a danger of no danger. And what I mean by that is when you're in the natural world, and I'm not saying people should go do dangerous things in nature, by the very nature of how uncertain it is, you have to switch on a different level of awareness. You cannot be living, dialing it in when you're out there. It requires attention, whether you're swimming onto the beach, whether you're swimming out through the waves to go and get some mussels off the rocks, whether you're walking in the rain on slippery rocks, like you got to be switched on. And so it forces a kind of attention. And, when you talk to a lot of people who are at the beginning of a journey and you talk to a lot of men, they say, yeah, I just feel like people will report feeling stuck, or they will report feeling like I'm kind of asleep in my own life. Everything's fine, but I don't really feel much. Nature is a remedy to that. Then there is something about operating in the unknown as a group, especially as a group of men, and you start to watch different skill sets come up, that attention is turned on, you have to be attuned to each other. That starts to also flip those switches of aliveness. Because, the minute you're out there in a wild place, you've got variables. And I think of that one day where Matt took us out to what they call the Top Hat Rock. And normally he doesn't let groups swim out to that rock. And the way that it worked is we were standing on a rocky shoreline, and then there is white water and waves and chop in front of you. And then out beyond that chop is a single rock that stands out there with a second rock on it that looks like a top hat. And he says to us, okay, I'm going to need 6 volunteers to swim out through this wild chop. When you get to the top hat rock, I'm going to pull you up. If you get sucked out, stay calm. It's going to spit you out around the corner, and one of your buddies will come and try and fish you out. That's when I was like, what? Sorry, what if you get sucked out? If you get sucked out into the wild coast ocean, yeah. Anyway, that whole experience, like the first group swam out there, and then what happens is while you're out on the rock, you have to get mussels off the rock. And Matt watches for sets of waves coming in, and then he tells the guys who are getting mussels, hide, and everyone runs, and you go behind the top hat, and the surf breaks over you. And as long as you're up against the rock, it protects you. I mean, that whole situation was like, a lot of things have to go right. And so everyone switched on that attention. First group swims out there. I I was not happy when our friend Timbo started to get sucked out. He was not looking like a strong swimmer, eventually makes it on. And just like the energy of like getting muscles off the rock, being aware, making sure that you hide at the right time so you don't get washed off, pounded onto the barnacles. And then the feeling too of like when the guys swim back, you have to time it. Otherwise you get surged onto, barnacle and muscle encrusted rocks. And then like when you get into the channel that you swim out of, your buddies have got to be there to catch you. You've got to get pulled out. Otherwise you will get pounded. So like on one level, there's like an edge to it. And on another level, there's an attention that's required. And there's aliveness there. And so, and also at the same time, you've got a guy like Matt who's modulating the risk. So he knows, he has enough of a sense of the place. So you start putting those three things together, you don't have to work too hard to get your aliveness switched on. And then you get an inner marker of like, that's how alive I can feel. And I'm not saying that everyone has to go off and do dangerous things. I'm just saying when you go into nature, you'll switch your awareness back on. And I think one of the missions is for all of us to switch our attention back on, be more attuned to our bodies, and actually like be involved in situations that require attention. That gets the aliveness going again.
Anybody can change at any time, period. There's no buts. That began the journey of getting sober. And so basically what happened was, it's not a traditional getting sober story because he said, go to this meeting and then come to this place. And I was like, okay. Went to the meeting and then I went to this Muay Thai kickboxing academy called 5 Points. At the time it was on Canal Street or just off Canal Street and Broadway, and where Soho kind of meets the Chinatown area. And they sat me down and they were like, if you listen to us and take our suggestions, you're going to have an awesome life. And if you don't, we're not going to chase you and you'll probably end up dead. So we're going to make it super easy for you.
Door A or door B.
Right. And so, the plan that they kind of articulated for me was very similar to the plan I have in my life today, which is wake up as early as you can, roll out of bed, drop on your knees and ask God for help. You can call it God, you can call it universe, you can call it energy, you can call it anything you want. Just know that you're not the one in charge. So just ask for fucking help because you need help, young man, and go take a piss, wash your face, brush your teeth, put on your contact lenses, put on your running shoes or a pair of sneakers and get outside immediately. Go for a walk, go for a run, move your body. It could be a block, it could be 10 miles. We don't care. Just move your body in the morning. Come back, make yourself a bowl of oatmeal. Add whatever the hell you want to it. It's easy, it's satiating, it's healthy. Once you're done with your oatmeal, go to an AA meeting. Sit down in the front fucking row, raise your hand, and tell everybody who you are and why you're there. Who you are is Michael Chernow. Why you're there? Because you are a drug addict and an alcoholic. And I was like, oof. Okay. And then he said, right when you're done with that, get on your bike, because I had a bicycle, and ride down to 5 Points every day. And meet us there at 12 o'clock. And you're going to train for 2 to 3 hours. And we're going to teach you how to be a man. We're going to teach you about discipline and integrity and how to fight back the right way, how to get back up, how to be a person living a life that's very different than the life you're living today. And when we're done training, you're going to have chicken and broccoli. You're going to take a nap. You're going to go to work, because I was in the restaurant, and you're going to have chicken and broccoli for dinner. And you're going to go to bed as early as you can. And you're just going to rinse and repeat. And that is your life in a nutshell. Stick to the plan, stick with us. You follow that plan. Check in 10 years and tell me where you're at. Tell me that we were wrong. And dude, those guys saved my life. Not only did they save my life, but they just introduced me to a world of wonderful fucking shit. And I do what they told me to do then today. You know, and I've changed my habits that almost killed me to habits that make me the guy I am today. And today I can honestly say that I'm a husband and a dad. And I never thought that I would be able to do that. Straight up. Almost every time I talk about it, I get sad because whoever thought that I'd be able to do that? Be a dad to like these kids that I fucking love for real. Like, and my wife that has supported me the whole time through all the crazy shit. You know, I'm a husband and a dad, and I can't believe that that's real. Because if you took a snapshot of what my vision of a husband and a father was, and you said, okay, like, oh, sorry. I didn't know that was coming.
Please.
But you did that, and you saw the little kid that was experiencing all that shit, and you just had to put money on it, just like at a poker table. And everybody at the poker table were gamblers. And he said, okay, we're going to paint a picture of me, who I am today, and then me, who I was August 1st, 2023. Who do you put your money on this kid is going to end up like long-term? Everybody's putting their chips on this guy. Mm-hmm. Everyone. You'd have to be dumb not to, right? Maybe the one-off dude was like, I'll go all in on this fucking dream. And yeah. So I just began this path of understanding that I can change and understanding that there's a solution for people like me who are really good humans. Just didn't know that your past doesn't have to predict your present or future. You know, that like your past can predict your present or future if you allow it to. And today I'm so grateful for the shit that I went through, because I could put my kids down and pinch myself and just say, dude, man, your father never put you down. Like, he never put you to bed. And sometimes it's a pain in the ass to put my kids to bed.
Yep.
But when I'm doing it and I'm in there with them and I'm like, I got these two dudes.
How old are the boys right now?
6 and 9.
Okay.
It's the best thing that's ever happened in my life. Like, I feel like I'm just at the precipice of starting my business career, man. I'm 42, I'm 43. I've got 40 plus years ahead of me in business. You know, I believe that because I love what I do. And I know, doesn't matter how successful I am or will be, there's nothing that I'm going to love more by a billion than the family that I've created because of where I came from. And so, you know, the life that, and honestly, I got to draw it back to there now in my life. You know, there's a lot of other things I do, meditation and sauna and cold and all those things. But really what, you know, if anybody's listening to this and struggling in any way, or whether it's with alcohol or drugs or just life, I'm just here to tell you what you put into your body and how you move your body will move mountains.
My heart was failing, my lungs were failing, and my kidneys were failing. And the cancer that I had is acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is one of the rarest and most aggressive forms of not just leukemia, but cancer in general. And what it does is it attacks your organs through your blood. And so again, heart, kidneys, lungs failing. And the doctor said you have 1 to maybe 3 weeks to live, Hal, if you don't start chemotherapy tomorrow. Now I don't, you know, I have my opinions about the about Western medicine in general. And I'm very grateful for Western medicine. It saved my life during the car accident, arguably during cancer. But, I wasn't going to take what he said at face value. And my wife, Ursula, is, sitting next to me, squeezing my hand under the table so hard it's going to break as she's holding back tears. And I said, okay. I said, doctor, what do you recommend? And he said, you need to start chemo. And because your cancer is so aggressive, this is one of the most aggressive chemotherapy regimens in existence. He said, you're going to do roughly 800 hours of chemotherapy over the next 8 months. So 100 hours a month over the course of 5 days, 5 different drugs. And you'll do it. And then 3 every month. Right. And I was like, oh, I'm not, no wonder the survival rate is so low, because you're poisoning your body. Yeah. No wonder you die. Right.
Yeah.
And so I went, okay, doctor, I said, I no offense, but I know chemo is also, it's a form of poison. It's killing the cancer and it's killing the human. I said, I would like to treat this holistically. And I'm wondering, can you support me in that? And he said, Hal, look, I appreciate that you and again, this is a doctor. Sure. All right. Yeah. But he says, I appreciate that you want to do that. But he says, you don't have that luxury. Again, you have 1 to 3 weeks to live. There is no holistic practice that you can do that is going to magically cure you in 1 to 3 weeks. But he said, if we start chemo, it will immediately start attacking the cancer. And he said, your lungs will stop filling with fluid, and all your organs will start to regenerate. And I was like, give me 24 hours to go home and talk to my wife and sleep on this and talk about it. He said, okay, but I wouldn't wait more than, you've got a week to live, dude. We need to start tomorrow.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. Right. And I've got a 7-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son at that time. Right. So it's like, fuck, what do I do? And so I went home, and we had actually rented an apartment right next to the hospital. I'm in MD Anderson Cancer Hospital in Houston, 3 hours away from my home in Austin, Texas. And I Googled holistic oncologists, and I found a couple of the best holistic oncologists. One happened to be there in Houston. I was like, oh, this is it's meant to be. This is the guy. Dr. Brzezinski. He's like, he has documentaries made. He's famous. He cured Suzanne Summers naturally. And the guy's well known, right? So I'm like, oh, this is it. He's in Houston. So I reach out to his clinic, and his nurse practitioner, whoever, tells him the cancer I have. And she comes back and says, hey, Dr. Brzezinski said there's nothing that any holistic oncologist can do for you. Your oncologist that you met with was not exaggerating. This cancer will kill you in a week or 2.
Oh my
And so your best bet is chemo. I was like, oh. So I was like, all right, well, so I called another holistic oncologist, said the exact same thing. And I was like, okay, if some of the best holistic oncologists in the country are telling me that my best bet is chemo, what am I going to supersede their judgment and go, no, I'm going rogue, dude. I got that, So like against every fiber of my being, I've got to poison my body like extreme, a 20 to 30% survival rate. And here's what I told my wife. The day that I was like, okay, I'm doing chemo, sweetie. We decided together I'm doing chemo. I said, but I'm not leaving my health up to the doctors. I said, I am going to relentlessly research and every holistic practice known to man to beat cancer. And I'm going to combine the best of Western medicine. Best to me is a very relative term at this. But I'm going to, every day I'm going to affirm and meditate that my body is strong enough and resilient enough and intelligent enough to allow the chemo to kill the cancer while my cells find a way to thrive. And so every day I got in that state in my meditation. And in terms of the holistic, I did 3 coffee enemas a week. I did lymphatic massage. I did ozone sauna. I took 70 supplements a day. I did organic juicing. I did everything not to mention my entire miracle morning became focused on saving my life. So I meditated in that state of being completely healed. I had a set of affirmations, which I really believe affirmations saved my life. I visualized walking my daughter down the aisle. I visualized being completely healed. I exercised as often as I could. I read books on how to beat cancer naturally. Like that was every day. That's what I read. Like here's how people have done it. Here's success stories, right? I journaled what I was grateful for and so on. And And so my life was dedicated to beating the cancer. And then here's one of the most important overarching paradigms that I adopted on day one. In fact, I told my wife this before I even got all the info on what I had and or as soon as I was diagnosed with this cancer and given a 20 to 30% chance of surviving, I said, sweetheart, I know you're scared. I know you're terrified. And I said, but I want you to know I am, but I'm not. I said, because the doctor said I would never walk again based on statistics. And I committed, I decided I am going to maintain unwavering faith that I can walk again until I'm proven it wrong. And I took my first step 3 weeks later. And I said, here's the way that I look at this. I know you are fixating on the 20 to 30% survival rate. And I said, but I want you to understand, that's how many people survive out of an unhealthy population. That accounts for all the people that give up on day one. That accounts for all the people that don't change their diet or habits or behaviors. I said, that's not me. I said, I'm going to do everything, in my power to beat this cancer. And I said, here's how I'm looking at it. There is a 100% chance that I will be among the 20 to 30% of the people that survive this cancer because I'll do everything that they did and way more. I said, so that's why I have unwavering faith that I'm going to beat it. I'm one of those people, no other option. And I think that gave her a little bit of comfort, but once again, kind of like with the car accident, my body, I responded well to the chemo. Like I started to get back to health, and it was the most difficult time in my life for sure. But I ended up, beating the cancer, and that's 7 years ago, roughly. Yeah. 6-7 years ago.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
I was only 2 years out of having dropped out of medical school.
That's right.
And so I was like, I was on the grind because of a number of reasons, but, a strong family lineage of doctors and healthcare, and just growing up in that world and being really drawn to the sciences, and kind of being told from a young age, like, you're going to be a great doctor like your dad and your brother. You're going to be the best of all of them because you're the brightest, getting the best grade, but whatever. So I was kind of just marching down this path for lack of a real understanding of what I wanted out of my future, my career, my life, not being particularly drawn to any one field of medicine, but just like, okay, I guess I'm going to do the doctor thing. And I really love fitness. I love nutrition. I love that side of things, but there's not really good models for like how to turn that into a career that looks like a physician's career. Like, this is my model of success, is my dad, who's, international healthcare celebrity. Like he was like a prolific researcher in his field and was giving talks internationally for 20 years. I didn't have entrepreneurial, like anything in my world. It was like, you go this route. So that was what I was doing. And I just kind of went the path. And then like I was in medical school, I was like, man, this is just not it for me. Like, I am not doing well. This is not taking me where I want to go.
How long were you in medical school?
A year and some change.
Yep.
And I left very drawn to the fitness community, and CrossFit was where I just like landed to like get my reps in.
So had you done CrossFit at that point?
A little bit. I dabbled.
You were an athlete. You were a really great soccer player.
Yeah, I played a lot of college sports. I played college soccer, played a lot of sports, but got really into fitness in college. And got like introduced to CrossFit, and I saw it. I was kind of dabbling like on the .com, the .com scene.
Yeah.
And, but I saw this like emerging community, and I was like, oh man, like I think I want to be a part of that. And so I dropped out of med school to go be a CrossFit coach. Like, think about that for a second. It's like, whoa, and having to like unprogram like that mentality of like, this is what success looks like. Buddy. And it's like, no, maybe this is what I need to do now, because I'm just like hitting bottom here. So when you met me in 2010, I was just like, I was fresh out of like you just left the thing that was kind of a sure bet to be successful.
Oh,
you got to figure out how to make this other thing successful. And so I was very committed to like, I'm going to be the best coach possible. CrossFit's the community that I'm going to land in and get my reps in. At the time, it was like, you didn't even have to market. Like people just coming in and just wanting to do stuff, at your gym and learn. And I was doing it right, doing it wrong, just whatever. I could just learn and grow. And so 7 years of CrossFit was like me building a new foundation for like, okay, I'm doing the thing. I can be successful here. I made it as a coach. I made it as a business owner. I made it as an athlete. I created like that understanding of this is what I didn't make a mistake in leaving medical school. But after that season of life, it was like, okay, now I'm getting married. We're about to have a baby. And this CrossFit thing, I'm ready to evolve past this, like not the people and not what I was doing, but like, okay, there's more to this than just group fitness. There's like coaching people. There's a world out there of how to coach people. And it's not just group fitness. It's different things. And so I sort of like parted ways with my business partners. I had also kind of parted ways with the sport of CrossFit and grid. I was done competing because it was a very large commitment in terms of time and physical energy for very little return in terms like monetary return. Like I couldn't justify 30 hours a week of training anymore when I was like, now I got to really like support my life, my family, like my next phase of life. And I had beyond 7 years of CrossFit, I had almost 15 years of fitness experience. And I was like, CrossFit's been amazing and I love it and I don't want to stop doing it. But there's all these other things I've done in the past that also felt amazing. I did Paul Chek stuff. I did Charles Poliquin stuff. I did collegiate strength and conditioning. I did bro splits at the gym. Like there's a lot of ways to do the fitness thing that go beyond, going hard and fast and doing the high intensity CrossFit. And that was when I started to like, okay, how am I going to define my own training approach? It was like, well, it's going to be functional, but it's also going to be a little bit of the bodybuilding stuff I did in the past. And it's going to blend some things together. And if we stop trying to chase like elite performance as it was written by the CrossFit, people, there's a lot of ways to do it. And I'm just a student of fitness through and through. Like where do I spend my time? Like, I'm just studying fitness all the time still. Trying to learn from as many people as possible and take in a lot of information and then disseminate it in like a way that people can understand and like digest. And so I didn't know what to call it, but one day on social media, I had just done like a workout and like I had shown clips of it. And I think I was doing like some kipping pull-ups, but then I was also doing like some curls and some landmine presses and some band stuff and some tempo bodybuilding. And I was like, man, I got a sick pump today. And I did some functional training. It was like functional bodybuilding. I just like wrote that in a caption and then functional bodybuilding. Like people were writing in the comments, like, that's sick. I want to do that. Like, what's functional bodybuilding? Oh. And it totally just was like a very organic thing. So much so that I was like, I like went and Googled functional bodybuilding. Like, does anyone have this trademark? Like, is someone else doing this? And there was like one T-Nation article from like 2000 that was like how to functional bodybuild. And it was basically a bodybuilder, like somebody writing about bodybuilding with full range of motion. I was like, okay, well, that's one thing. And then some guy had like the URL, functionalbodybuilding.com, but he was doing nothing with it. And he was just like a personal trainer that like called himself a functional bodybuilder. And I still never heard from him after that. I was like, okay, like this is a thing. And it just resonated so well with so many people and me. I was like, okay, I'm the functional bodybuilding guy now. And I just started to build a brand around that. And the method is really just a method of like, I'm a student of it all. And like, I don't want to be in a container of one thing. And I don't think other people want that either. They want to feel they can do a lot of different stuff. Speaking to kind of I have a deep desire to be having fun and just mixing it up over time. And as you know, coming up in CrossFit gyms, you know, it was like sacrilegious to like do bicep curls. Like people just talked shit about like, we don't do bicep. I mean, in my level 1, like certificate course for CrossFit, they were like, we don't do bicep curls because you can't develop enough power to get intensity. And I was like, cool, got it.
Yeah.
Roger that. No bicep curl. I was like drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
right?
me too.
Yeah. So we don't do that. We don't do this. We don't do that. And then towards the end of like coaching
we do
CrossFit
med ball cleans.
Yeah, but we do med ball cleans. Towards the end, it was like, it'd be so funny. Like I think back and there was like a bunch of our members, like we finished the workout and they would go over and like run the rack and do some dumbbell curls. And they were kind of like in the back. And I'm like, man, people still like to do this stuff, you know, like they're into it. And, you know, like, why are we not celebrating that? Why are we not like including all of that together in a way? And when I did do that, and when I put out a program that was people did CrossFit with bodybuilding to my CrossFit, you know, my core audience at that point were CrossFitters. They loved it. I loved it. They loved it. We were all into it. It was like a renaissance. Like it was crazy how people reacted to that. And I told you the story of how it came about. It was very like, it was the last thing I wanted to do was to write a fitness program that was like an online, you know, ebook. I was like anti doing it, but I had a business partner, or my business partner now, like was persistent. And she was like, you should try this. Sati was like, you should do this. This woman cold pitched me like to do something. I was like, no. Okay, fine. And then people really responded to it. And it just sort of like, and now what's funny is that like many of my peers in the CrossFit space that were able to transition to businesses that were successful, that have online training programs. If you look at all the big ones now, like guys I competed with back in the day, they've got their online programs. Yeah. They all have a bodybuilding component to it. And it was like, I really feel like we paved the way. And it was like, now everyone does functional bodybuilding in some way. You know, it's just a thing that's out there because people wanted it. And not just because it was variety, but because training is not about maximal intensity all the time. It should not be that. And that will never work for the masses. You need intensity to see change, but you need consistency to win the long game. And if you do it too hard, you don't get people very consistent.
You, 18 months ago, retired. I have quotation marks here. You thought you were going to retire.
I thought I was done.
And Rogan famously said, I'm not going to your party because you're not retiring and building this club. He was going to open it up, 3-4 months later. And he's like, you're going to be there. You're going to be doing sets. And that's what happened. Now, when did you realize that you weren't really?
He likes being right too.
Yeah, well, he's done a good job. When did you realize that you were going to get back into the game? Unretire?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I got offered 3 dates, for a big pile of money. And so I thought that I would do that and see if it was fun. But I had to get myself in shape to do those shows, to do that long hour set. Because I wasn't doing any long sets. I was just doing 15-minute sets and having fun and no agenda, no plan at all. Just at that time, I was just going to not do comedy on the road. And
just going to work at the market.
And also Rogan pays comics. So
yeah, how's that different than other clubs?
Here I'll give you an example. If I do a set at the Comedy Store, I'll be even more candid than if I do a set at a casino, it's $125,000. If I do one at the Comedy Store, it's $35. So they get quite a discount of $124,000. I don't know. It's a big discount. But it's a showcase club and you need those sets, right? So they don't have to pay you anything. And I never picked up one of the checks. I have a stack of checks this thick at the Comedy Store to this day because I just didn't need the $35. But in Joe's club, if I do a 15-minute set in the main room, he pays me $1,200.
Jeez.
And if I go on last, he pays me like $8,000. And you can't make over $35 in New York or LA. I think, well, no, with Comedy Cellar, they pay $50 for sets during the week and $100 on the weekend.
Ooh.
And people live on it. I mean, there's so many sets that you can do in LA, in New York, that you can scrape by a living and never leave the city, and people do it, and I guess. And that's the same thing here. You can make a living in Austin doing stand-up comedy, and that's a rare thing, and you don't have to leave. If you're in with Joe, but Joe pays the guy, the doorman, more than that just to quit doing their job as a doorman and go up there and do a set, which they're lucky to be able to do.
Wow.
He pays them more money than the store or it's like $100 a set. Just to stop your job and go up there and make an extra $100 and get to do stand up, which is what you want to do anyway. And that's why you work there as a doorman. So it's 80% of the door goes to the comics. And that was nobody's idea but Joe Rogan. He always felt like, why not treat comics fair? Why not acknowledge that we're in the comedy business and nothing matters but the comedians.
Yeah.
Before, when I retired, I'd be halfway through a show and I couldn't wait to get off stage. And that's when you need to quit. And I was bored with it, and I didn't really like the show I was doing that much, although the crowd liked it fine. There was no real pop in it. And I was like, I don't have what makes it fun for me. And so I thought it was a great time to retire, and I thought I'd done enough. And I didn't know if I could ever get that power back in my show, and I didn't even know where it went or where it came from originally. I couldn't figure it out. And so I was perfectly okay with it. I thought it was a smart decision. And then I would say Rogan talked me out of it, but he was never convinced that I was anything but tired. And I was tired.
Mm-hmm.
It was years and years of doing all the 120 plus, 145 one year, and just killing everybody. And I did that because I always thought it would come to an end, and I didn't know when it would, but it could be like tomorrow. So I better do all the work I can and stockpile some money, for when this thing collapses. And then it never did collapse. And I'm like, somebody's got to put a stop to this. I'm going to do it myself. And so to get back out, it was different because, number one, the show is so much fun to do because I do have that, whatever it is, that power back, and I'm beating these crowds up hard. But I also have a different kind of sense of gratitude that they're still there, and I know it's not, I know a lot of it's because of Rogan and Tony and Segura, a lot of podcasts that I do, but it's easier to sell tickets now than it's ever been. And I could take the show to bigger venues, which I don't want to do. I've always kind of shied away. I've done some arenas before, and the sound's not that great. It's not that great an experience. So, in fact, I wouldn't do the big Moody Room. I'd rather do 4 in the ACL Live than do that big, just because it's a better experience for the customer and for me. But instead, I'd rather do 200 shows at the comedy club than do 4 at the big one. So it made me just grateful that it was all there and that I could read, that I had friends that were willing to say, hey, you deserve a break, take a year off. And I took a full year that I didn't tour.
Mm-hmm.
And which was also great. And now I don't know how much longer I'm going to do it. But not forever, not forever. I'll probably do stand up in town for a long time, but going out on the road, maybe a couple more years. So I'm happy with where it's all at. I'm really content. I spend some days trying to make up things in my head that I should be anxious about, but there really aren't any. I haven't had a drink in 3.5 years, and I'm not hiding a big coke problem. I don't have a secret family somewhere. I'm going, what is it that you're worried about, Ron? You're really kind of your life's running pretty smooth, So I'm happy, I'm really, really just content.
This is something that Boyd told me. Is like, I felt good hearing it from him. You just will take shit. You'll just take it. You're just strong. You can take it. And a lot of the last couple years of life has been like learning that I don't have to just take it. Like I thought it was a value and an honorable thing to just be super strong and just take it all. Now it's like, I want to understand what my own preferences are. I want to be okay with them. And it actually feels like shameful partly because what dad's expectations of me were like, be the developer guy playing golf, stick around, and whatever his expectations were. They've been super gracious with me. They're like, I stopped doing sports because there was too much pressure. Dad was just barking on the sidelines.
That's hard.
And so I was like, fuck that. And I started doing music. And he was like, here's a guitar. And he just like was always so supportive of me. He would come home from work. I'd be like jamming super loud in the garage with this huge amp, this half stack amp. I was in all these metal and hardcore bands in the Bay Area. And I would turn around and I realized he'd just been sitting there like listening and watching.
No shit.
Like tons of love and support. So like, and yet still that young child just feeling like the demand, the pressure to succeed. And I think that's all squeezed out sideways. Now I have this, like, I put pressure on myself to try to be cool instead of to succeed. And I'm like, so sick of that. I'm just like, so much more interested in what other people think of me than what I think by nature somehow. And that doesn't feel like a winning strategy at all. That feels so fucking lame. It's like the lamest thing.
We talked about it a little bit. I think it was last week or something.
Yeah.
Just like some of these stories we have and some things whatever it is, where we want to go, whatever. And then when we deconstruct those things, it's like, I'm just looking for external validation.
I'm just looking for validation.
Yeah.
I'm like so insecure. Right. And that's okay. And the only way through this is like, first of all, that's okay. And then what? I don't know. I'm still working on that. It's like just trying to orient towards my preference. One of the things that Sutcliffe taught me was, okay, find your truth, like speak your truth, say the thing that's true for you. Number one. Number two, let the other person have their reaction. Let them have it. Right. And then number three, hold yourself as good. Don't cut yourself off at the knees. Don't make yourself bad. Don't like go like, oh, the reaction was intense and this, that, and the other. So it's like, it's my fault. Oh, you're right. I am a fucking retard. Whatever it is, right? Yeah. It's like, tell your truth. Let them have their reaction, and hold yourself as good. And my question to him was like, I'm already doing the algebra on what the reaction's going to be before I've even identified my truth. I'm confused about what's true for me.
Yeah,
that's where I am right now. It's like, what's true for me? What do I want? What do I prefer?
Wow.
Yeah,
I get stuck on that whole process too, especially the third one. Like, I didn't get the reaction I was expecting, and now I'm like all fucked up.
Yeah, and it is like a superhero power, but for a lot of guys, probably for a lot of women as well. But for a lot of guys, we make ourselves bad. It just seems to be in the water. We make ourselves bad. Like, oh, it's my fault. And with the shame, the difference between shame and guilt is shame is like you are fundamentally bad, evil, wrong, broken, right? And that's why this shit keeps happening to you. And I super struggle with that. I think part part of the reason why I ended up choosing Christianity in the first place was like, I already was oriented that way. It's like, okay, well now I can be good by this. Great. Gives me some confidence, gives me like learn how to, but the deeper sort of levels I seek are like, I want to be able to hold myself as good, even if my preference and opinion feels like something that is hurtful or I'm not supposed to, or it's taboo. Or it's like, I still want to be able to own that. I don't have to presence it. I don't have to like make this happen. I don't have to, but I can look at that at the young psyche that feels this, and I can be with that. That feels like the way forward. That feels like growth. You know, what Terry Real calls like this wise adult inside of me. I'm the wise adult loving these parts of me that are like juvenile or coming out sideways or turn a bit upside down or something.
This shit we signed up for is hard. Even if you have a relatively easy life, you know, like I said, we all experience pain subjectively. So, you know, if you break your knee, it's a broken knee to you that's going to feel different to my broken knee that might be less or more severe, right? It's like we're each feeling our own internal pain as strong as the next person, you know? So, I mean, imagine a world where people really were able to cultivate the willingness to do their shadow work and address and face their core wounds. Imagine the empathy and compassion that would come from that in terms of the collective, right? I mean, even people that I would, you know, I have like my imaginary enemies of the world, you know, the evildoers that I think are running the stuff, but they're probably just the gophers for the people that are really running things. And I'll feel hatred in my heart for these people sometimes, you know, the people that are, whose actions are antithetical to life and antithetical to humanity, to freedom, are in opposition to any definition of love. And I'll find myself, I'm such a loving person that I hate that person and want them to die. You know, it's like, is that, wait, that I'm them then, right? So to me, it's like a great marker of my own progress when I can not co-sign or, you know, go along with someone who, say, is harming other people or something like that, but to also have the understanding that they're just deeply hurt people. And that hurt people. And which is scary because if everyone's hurt, everyone's going to keep hurting people. But conversely, healed people heal people. You know, the more work each of us do as an individual, we carry that work with us into the world. I'm going to be much less likely to be rude and abusive to a gas station clerk because of the work I've done on my own hurt. Any healing I've done is going to be represented just by who I am. I don't have to do anything to be nice to the clerk or get social credit, you know, for being like, did you see like the tip I just left the waiter? You know, I used to do that shit. I'd like do something nice just to show off, you know? Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah. It's part of our evolution.
You know, as we really commit to our individual healing, then it's not even about what you do. It's just the essence of who you are as you move through the world. You have a healing effect on anyone with whom you share space just by the nature of your consciousness, and that you've identified who and what you really are to a greater degree as you've climbed out of your past and your trauma and your patterns and programming. And you realize like, wow, I really am a spiritual being that seems to have come here and is utilizing this body to get something done. Well, what am I getting done? Evolution, you know? And without the pain, where's the evolution?
Yeah, without that challenge.
Right?
And
like, yeah, if you just popped out with complete, you know, Buddha-like non-attachment and Jesus-like forgiveness, then kind of what's the point of being here in a body and going through the shit that we go through as human beings? There has to be a purpose to it. Otherwise, I don't want to do it.
Well, there's no contrast if you're just this thing, right? That's the whole idea is we need the dark and the light to be able to experience.
Yeah.
And studied the literature on addiction extensively. I wasn't satisfied with what I saw because it really didn't identify the actual problem. It stated what an addiction is, but it doesn't tell you what the problem is. So I created my own definition of an addiction. An addiction is any repeated behavior that does not produce the results you want. An addiction is any repeated behavior that does not produce the results you want. In order to know what the results are that you want, you must have a clearly stated dream, goal, or objective for your life. You must be passionate about and willing to create something that's bigger than you. If your goal is no bigger than you, then it's easy to make an excuse. You can say, oh, tomorrow. And one of the things that I've found in my career is that the most powerful goals, dreams, or objectives are the ones that somehow help other people have better lives. When I was a young man and I became the trainer of the Army boxing team, I knew then and there that my life path was not to be a professional fighter. It was to help people because I got such a great sense of joy and peace knowing that I was able to help fighters get over injuries quicker, to perform better. I taught them how to eat. I taught them how to train. I taught them many of the same things I teach now. And I found myself much more fulfilled when I could see the brightness in their eyes and see them winning tournaments where they used to not win and lasting longer in the ring where they used to get tired by the middle of the second round. And I felt finally that there was something I could do with my life that was helping other people. And so instead of me winning a fight, I got to win 12 fights in a night. But really, back to the really issue at hand. An addiction is any repeated behavior that doesn't produce the results you want. So here's what I tell myself. I love this smoke, right? That's, it's not really smoke. As you know, it's water vapor. But let's say it was smoke. My question is always, is it helping me accomplish my dream or is it getting in the way? Is it stopping me from being committed to my athletic development, to my Tai Chi, to my inner work, or is it getting in the way? Is it decreasing my sex drive and my ability to be a man, or is it getting in the way? Is it stopping me from being creative, or is it getting in the way? So I always ask myself with anything, where's the threshold where this actually starts to become antagonistic to my stated dream, goal, or objective? And simply put, if you can't cut it back or put it down, the first thing I do is say we need to reevaluate your dream, goal, or objective. Because if your dream, goal, or objective is not bigger than you, or bigger than your cup of booze, or bigger than your joint, or bigger than your cocaine, you still haven't got clear on what you're here to do. And that's where we have to do some work to go deeper into what I call soul and really identify the genius inside of you. My belief is that we are all God manifest with a piece of the puzzle. Within each of us is something that we're each here to do that only we can do. God never does anything twice. There's no stone. There's not even a grain of sand. There's not even identical twins that are identical. There's nothing in the created universe that's identical. Every single thing God creates is a one-off masterpiece. And it's up to us as a human being to go through the process of self-exploration to find out what it is that's hiding in our heart that, if released into the world, fills that piece of the cosmic puzzle. And the way I share this with my students, I'll say, imagine walking into great, beautiful auditorium, and there's this massive, gorgeous puzzle on the wall, and it represents the whole universe. If there was one piece missing, where would your eyes immediately go? And everyone agrees, right to the hole. And that is, no matter how beautiful it is, that hole would be like a black hole. It would suck you in and keep saying, how did an artist that could do this forget that one piece? And every human being alive is one of those puzzle pieces. And so we are always plagued with the question, why am I here and who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And when we answer those questions and we live as that person, the peace is fulfilled and the art of life is beautiful.
The metaphor for us has been dancing. For years, Tatiana has begged me to dance with her. And
Like literally dance?
Literally dance, like partner dance, like lead her on the dance floor. She has asked me for years about this.
So is Peyton.
Yeah. And I've resisted. And we could talk all about why that is. And my, the junior high John Vroman of like, what do I do with my hands? And is everybody looking at me? That person. All the way up to just feeling overwhelmed with life. And like, you want me to, so I'm the provider. I need to do this. I need to do that. And you want me to learn how to dance. Like, this is just not, and I don't love it naturally. So it's hard for me to lean into that. And this past, about 6 months ago, I was at a retreat with our group and I was sharing this story and about my relationship with Tatiana, and ultimately ended up committing to the group that I would learn how to partner dance in the next 6 months. And that I would dance in front of the group at our next retreat, which was last month.
Mm.
And so I did. I learned how to partner dance. Tatiana showed up and I danced with the group. I danced with her in front of the group, and it was a profound experience. And so many men walked up to me afterwards and like, my wife's been asking me about this. I'm going to lean in. I'm going to commit. That was beautiful to see Tatiana's reaction to you. That was an incredible moment. But the metaphor of the dance, I think, is so beautiful for us because there is I want to control many things that are not healthy in the relationship to try to control. And yet on the dance floor, our roles are very clearly defined that I'm the leader on the dance floor. And we get to step into this space where she completely surrenders. Her learning in this process of us, partner dancing, was that she had to let go. She had to let me lead. She had to trust me fully. And as a leader, I had to attune to her body. I needed to see how much movement was available. Where did she feel? How much pressure did I put with my hand? Too much, not enough. Too much, she feels like I'm just ripping her around the dance floor. Not enough, she doesn't know where to go. And that is such a beautiful way to look at our dance outside of the dance floor, in our energetic life, our parenting life, our marriage, our shared reality. And so learning how to literally dance with her has been transformative in our relationship.
Wow.
Been awesome.
So how does that work for you? Like we were talking before we got on, this idea that, within the family, you are the leader.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about like it's a huge responsibility.
Huge.
But oftentimes, I can turn away from that because it feels heavy and a lot, especially when I'm piling other things on. How has that helped you step into that role?
I don't know who to credit for originally saying this. I heard it decades ago, but it's this idea of being a thermostat or a thermometer. And in your home, you're one of the two.
Mm.
You're either setting the temperature in the room or you're reacting to the temperature in the room.
Oh, wow.
And so many times I've been reacting, that if things aren't organized or together, or people aren't responding to me the way that I think they should respond to me, or it's not going the way I think life should happen, I get very resistant to that, builds up tension. My nervous system gets dysregulated. And when I can have a strong back and open front, when I have found ways to be confident in myself, to trust myself, that I then can show up and be somebody who is the nervous system of my home. I reckon, I don't actually want to recognize how much power I have in my relationship with Tatiana. True story, this happened 2 days ago. There was a rub, there was some friction, and she got very angry. She would tell you this exact same story the same way, by the way. She got very angry and she said, last night at dinner with friends, I was ready to go to war with John. Like I was angry and I was ready to go to war. And I knew that. And I recognized that my pattern in the past was to go to war with her, right? There was a control, there was a righteousness, there was a masculine energy that's like, you want to go battle? I'm here for that. And I would even say that to people. When she rises up as a warrior, the warrior within me rises up, and I'm like, this is it. This is it. We're on.
Yeah.
And what I recognize now is that part of my warrior, my masculine, my solid self can bring humor to her, can bring softness to her. And I very quickly diffused her. I wasn't joking. I wasn't making fun of her. That wasn't the lightness. It was a playfulness in, I love you so much. We don't need to hate each other. And she felt that and immediately melted into me. And I mean immediate, like within hours, it was done, gone, and we were back to normal. Our ability to repair quickly has happened because, and she would tell you if she was sitting right here, because John decided that's what was going to happen. Now she plays a role, of course, but if I'm taking my responsibility, I can set the temperature very quickly and it changes. And I love knowing that.